Hello, everybody, and welcome to a conversation with artist Sandra Ullmann. She is exhibiting in the 7th annual Evanston Made group show online. Hello, Sandra. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Lisa. Thank you for all the work you do.
Absolutely. This has been really fun because I feel like these questions that we're giving artists really give the audience the chance to get to know them and their work. So first, tell us what piece you're exhibiting online in the group show.
It's a piece that is very welcoming. I was traveling in the northeast corner of Bangladesh, a very small group of photographers, 6 of us and 2 photographer teachers and a Bangladeshi man who was our guide. We traveled in a van, but most of the time we got out of the van and walked through villages, we walked along railroad tracks where people lived on either side. We went to markets, every single kind of market you could imagine. We went to a port town where people were repairing ships, and small villages where I don't think that the residents had ever seen very many Americans, because as we arrived on their street, they suddenly came out, doors were opening, and quite timidly and shyly, they began to look to see what was going on. And that was this little grouping, this woman, I'm imagining that it was her sister, and 2 children. They heard the commotion, they opened the door, and there she was, this beautiful woman smiling at me. So with a kind of looking at my camera and gesturing, would this be all right? She just kept smiling, and I took that photograph.
It's so gorgeous.
So typical of the Bangladeshi people in the rural areas, which is where we were. They were just full of grace. They were lovely.
Amazing. And what are you working on now? Do you have a current body of work that is taking up your time?
I'm finishing up the Bangladesh pieces. I was to have had a show at Perspective in the month of June, but we all know what was going on in the month of June.
Yeah.
So it will be rescheduled. I
Good.
don't know when. And instead of doing images in color, and Bangladesh is rich with color, I've chosen to make them black and white.
Oh.
Which will, I think, be really interesting, since it draws you in. It's all about shapes and shadows, and you have to figure out a little more what's going on, which is what I like.
Nice. Talk a little bit about, we referenced June. Everybody is dealing with the shelter in. Talk a little bit about what is different about your practice since this time, or if anything is different about your practice.
I welcomed it at first. I was excited to have all the time, as I know many, many people were. But gradually, as things have been opening up a little more, it's been a little harder to stay on track. I was very excited that I could finally make the website that I had never made, and felt guilty about doing that. I thought I should be out there making masks or out on the streets or doing talking to people, because I was a therapist at one point in time. But it really was a gift to be alone in this place with my husband. I'm an introvert, so I didn't mind at all just having me to be with most of the time. And it gave me hours and hours to think about where I was going and what I was doing and what it meant to me.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And talk a little bit about your journey in terms of becoming an artist, when you gave yourself the agency to use that title.
I'm not sure I really am an artist. I think it's a difficult title to assume. But as a child, I always made things out of whatever materials were around. The first time I think I began to really take on that name was in the 60s. I was spinning and dyeing. I roamed the fields with my youngest child and collected plant materials. And then we took them home and I dyed fleece, unspun, and then I spun it, and then I did a lot of weaving, largely for the street fairs that were just opening up at that time. I made pillows, wall hangings, clothing, and then gradually much more serious stuff that I entered in shows, international and otherwise. But I had to photograph these pieces in order to send them off. So I got a camera, a decent one, and discovered that one could make much more progress quickly taking photographs rather than sitting in a loom going back and forth. Right. And I loved taking pictures. So that changed.
That's so interesting. And who are your inspirations, or what are your inspirations when you come to a new project or your canvas or your camera, I should say?
That's okay, it's still a canvas. At the moment, the Indian Asian photographers, probably because I've spent this time in Bangladesh, and the colors there inspired me so much. Raghuveer Singh, Alex Webb, and his wife Rebecca, who are American, because they create such layering. They bring you something in the front, but then the details bring you back in, and it's a whole circular, mesmerizing composition that I would love to be able to do. So much action going on. So they are the people. But then there are also others whose work is starkly simple, but use materials in a different way. And
Mm,
I came to that from weaving, because you can weave with wire, you can weave with clothesline, you can weave with
yeah.
strips of fabric, I mean, with anything. So trying to find new ways of thinking, bring new materials to the palette, whatever that might be, is what interests me. Taking the image out of the frame.
Hmm.
Um, the sculptors, Eva Hesse and Lee Bonteku, whose work you can see in the Art Institute, if it ever opens,
Hmm.
did a lot of that, and I still am very impressed with what they've done.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that we get to see your show at Perspective
Ooh,
sooner than later. I know that they do a wonderful job exhibiting works, and I look forward to seeing your works on the walls, and I'm very grateful for your time today.
thank you.